I'm very anxious that you should meet what I told everybody about, our mystery guests. Our mystery people are a couple who have an extraordinary story to tell you. And I have to say that when I heard it first a few weeks ago, I thought I wouldn't be shocked by anything at this stage, having obviously been campaigning about this issue for some time. But this story has shocked me to my roots. So I'm now going to tell you about what happened to this nice couple, very nice looking. Step forward, please. This is Elizabeth and her husband, Hugh Docherty. Now, these people have been living on the streets of London for 10 years. They cannot claim benefits. They cannot work. Elizabeth's life is in danger. Hugh, her husband, has stood by her for many years to protect her, because he's protecting her, literally protecting her from the police and from all the other officials who want to get at this lady. He can't work. And so there they've been on the streets, and she has no identity. She's a non-person. You've heard of a straw man or a straw woman. This is a straw lady to beat all straw ladies into a corn dolly. She has no birth certificate that's real. She has no medical papers. Her national insurance ID has been changed 3 times. And now she just literally, without her husband, I think she wouldn't be here today. She would have passed on years ago. She's a lady who comes from Scotland. Now, there's a link to Holly Greig. What is it with Scotland? We'd really like to know what's going on in Scotland. I'm actually quite emotional about this case because I've just been learning about it in the last few days and losing sleep and being very upset because it's a horrible, horrible story. So I'm actually going to read you what I've got on a leaflet over there, which you can take away with you, and please publish it and publicize it as much as you can, because we are announcing this publicly, big time, today. There are a lot of people on the streets of London who've already heard from Elizabeth and Hugh about their story. But this is the first time we've told the story to media, to cameras, in a public place, as it is, without having mentioned a word about it for several weeks before now. So none of you know this story. So I'm now going to read it to you. I need my specs. Now, it concerns this lady. You can't see her, but she's a baroness in the House of Lords. Okay, and on my leaflets over there, you can see her picture. Elizabeth Docherty, who stands here before you at this rally, is living proof of one of the most shockingly callous cover-ups in modern political history. She was born in 1960, and she happens to be the oldest daughter of the widow of the late John Smith, the best prime minister that ever wasn't, who died in 1994, as you know. Some say paving the way for Tony Blair. Her mother is Baroness Smith of Gilmore Hill, who sits in the House of Lords and on high-level committees. Her mother took up with Labour politician John Smith when Elizabeth and her twin brother Robert were babies. To conceal the physical evidence of their mother's previous union with Robert Walker, Elizabeth's mother, who was a deaf-mute man, deaf and mute. Therefore, he posed no opposition. The twins, Elizabeth and her brother, were adopted separately, and their identities changed. In Elizabeth's case, her birth date was altered from 14th January to 14th December 1960. Elizabeth was raised by a couple called Gillespie, who beat and abused her throughout her childhood, and, as she puts it, treated her as a slave. In 1977, at the age of 16, she'd had enough and left home. A few years on, she was married and had 4 daughters, Michelle, Vicky, Kim, and Stephanie. Then she discovered her husband in bed with her best friend, so she left him, taking all the children. Not knowing as yet who her real mother was, she informed a social worker that she was off to find my biological mother. This ill-fated remark resulted in a summons to attend a children's panel at the town hall. And then, all at once, All her children were removed from her. She had no means of dealing with this situation. She had no idea of what was coming, no advice, no lawyer, nothing. And the children were taken away there and then in a library, in a town hall, in a town in Glasgow, in Scotland. Everybody here can imagine this terrible scene. She's described it to me, and perhaps she'll describe it to you. Of course, this was an outright crime. No mother should come before a children's panel. Children's panel is for children. The case should have been heard in a proper court. But a properly conducted court hearing, including legal representation for the defendant, would have revealed the anomalies surrounding Elizabeth's background, the forged documents, the changed ID, the lack of medical records. Overwhelmed by helplessness and grief at the loss of her children, Elizabeth attempted suicide, fortunately unsuccessfully. Then in 1989, she met her present husband and her guardian angel, Hugh Docherty. Their daughter Stacey was born in 1990, and in 1995 they married. Prior to the marriage, Elizabeth went through an emotional patch, and Hugh was advised by their doctor to leave her. Can you imagine that? The significance of this curious remark became clear on a visit to relatives when an aunt let slip who Elizabeth's real mother was. Moreover, that she had a twin brother. She had had no idea before then. She decided that one day she has to confront her mother face to face. So at 8:30 on a Sunday morning in July 1999, Elizabeth, Hugh, and Stacey turned up on the doorstep of Baroness Smith's Edinburgh home and were let in. The surreal encounter ended with her grandmother giving Stacey a very dark look. "You're next," she said. Refusing ever to keep quiet about the injustice done to his wife, Hugh was continuously being arrested for breaches of the peace and on other trumped-up charges. In 2000, the family fled Scotland for London. Then, in March 2001, Baroness Smith's ominous words were fulfilled. Stacey was taken. The following years have been a living hell. Distraught with grief and worry about their daughter, unable to claim benefits or to work, constantly hounded by the police, for the best part of a decade, Hugh and Elizabeth have been on the streets, a married couple, clean, non-alcoholic, sane, moral, sleeping in parks, shop doorways, and on church steps, grieving for 5 lost children. Costing the public purse by now possibly millions of pounds and thousands of hours of police time, all to protect the reputation of a baroness in the House of Lords and a political icon, the late John Smith. What kind of society are we in? How can such evil be tolerated? Why is no action taken? We can take action. I'd like you to write to the Baroness Smith in the House of Lords and tell her you've heard the story of her oldest daughter's sufferings and are deeply shocked. Write to the John Smith Foundation, the John Smith Memorial Trust for Democracy and Social Justice. Get that? And tell them that they are a whitened sepulchre for a fraudulent man who was perfectly content to commit the most horrible acts of inhumanity in pursuit of his political career. Write to Gordon Brown and Tony Blair and tell them the so-called New Labour Party, as directed from Scotland, is built on crime, cruelty and immorality, and that the stench of it will percolate through history. And please write to me, and I'll let you know what else we're going to do. Thank you. And I'm going to ask Hugh if he would tell us about one or two of the bits of the story, because this story, I've only told you the bare bones. It's just so extraordinary, it will make a book and probably a film very shortly, I hope. So, Hugh, can you tell me what happened in the court when you were brought before the courts?
Basically, no word. No matter what I said, just totally ignored. My daughter bundled screaming hysterically into the back of a police car. No social services, no lawyer, no charges, and thrown on the street. made to live on the street because we hold the truth about the Scottish Parliament, about Mr. Smith. The last two Prime Ministers of this country are in power off the background of the terrorisation of my wife throughout her entire life, the kidnapping and abduction of all her children, just to make Mr. and Mrs. Smith look honourable people. I'm surprised my wife's alive today. She's only got hope that the media will bring this out and that her mother will face charges of the kidnapping and abduction of her 5 children in collaboration with the police. Don't know what else to say. Right. No.
Tell me, how have you managed to survive being sectioned? Hugh has been sectioned to a mental hospital 3 times. I don't know how he managed to get himself out of there, but he did.
Well, the sections, when I was sectioned, I was an automatic political prisoner. I didn't take food or fluids and challenged them to give me medication. No section papers, no discharge papers, and just constantly visited 6 and 7 times a day by the police on behalf of the establishment. I don't know what else to say.
Okay. Do you want to say anything, Elizabeth? I think we're going to have to leave it there because we've had a very emotional few days actually getting this story down on paper for the first time in a lot of detail. And I don't think I can go on with it. They can't go on with it, so we'll pass you on to the next speaker.